Hello everyone! It's time for another author reading from Herrera Kamin, but today it's a bit of a special one because look what I've got here. This is Morgana Wynd, my first published novel from Three Ravens Publishing, in print at long, long last. So today I'm going to read for you the prologue, and without further ado, let's begin. The storm came crawling out of the grayness left in the setting sun's wake and scuttled over the ocean toward the Morgana Peninsula. It caught the townsfolk off guard. Without warning, the evening turned on them, ice and frigid rain blasting sideways over the cliff tops and through the trees, lightning bleaching the sky, thunder rolling close behind it. And underneath it all, a mad, blustering wind shrieked and wailed. As the townsfolk of the peninsula cowered in their thatched log houses, it sounded to them less and less like a storm, and more like peals of deranged laughter echoing through the electrified air. By morning it was over. The townsfolk gathered on the beach to behold a tremendous sight. The lighthouse, which for years had stood on a rocky islet just offshore, had fallen. Toppled by the might of the storm, it lay crumpled like a sundered tree on the islet's rocks. The surf swallowed the ruins over the next few days, dragged them bit by bit into the mouth of the sea until there was nothing left of the lighthouse. The townsfolk grew restless. They wanted to build a new lighthouse. Without one, they knew, the peninsula would become a perilous destination for merchant vessels. Gradually, the traders who had made Morgana Wynd prosperous would forget about it. But the townsfolk couldn't do it. They couldn't rebuild the lighthouse. It wasn't for lack of trying. At a town meeting, plans for a new lighthouse were presented, and a construction team rowed out to the islet the very next day to begin work. But in the evening they returned, eyes downcast, and explained in hushed tones that they simply couldn't build a new lighthouse. It couldn't be done. Why? The mayor demanded. The builders and architects couldn't explain it. All they could say was that the sound of the storm was stuck in their heads, even weeks after it had passed. They just couldn't shake it. That lingering echo, a cackling wind that was more than just wind. And then, one day, the lighthouse grew back on its own. Nobody saw it happen. One morning it was just there, silhouetted against the horizon again, as though it had been standing unchecked for 1,000,000 years. Assembled once more on the beach, the townsfolk gaped in awe at what could only be described as a miracle. It's back. But something wasn't right. It wasn't anything the townsfolk wanted to put into words. The lighthouse was just wrong, somehow. It leaned into the hollow of the wind, and anyone who glimpsed it out of the corner of their eye would say it looked slanted, crooked. Whenever people went down to that beach and stared at the lighthouse for too long, they would always say the lighthouse was staring right back at them. And even with a regrown lighthouse, it wasn't long before the merchant ships stopped coming. After a few years, the Morgana Peninsula had been entirely forgotten by the world. Years became decades. Decades became centuries. And through it all, the lighthouse stood sentinel on the rocky islet, or, as the townsfolk took to calling it, the Cursed Rock. They told stories about it, stories whispered by candlelight, as though the lighthouse could hear them in the walls of their homes. They say they saw her on the rocks. Who says that? The crab fishers. They say they saw her at dusk. What did they say they saw? A woman, or a girl, or someone, standing at the foot of the lighthouse in a white dress. A woman in a white dress? That's what the crab fishers said. Over the years, only a handful of people would dare to enter the lighthouse. 2 of them came on a midsummer night at twilight. They brought a lighted candle made from human tallow and hemp wick and something heavy in a dark canvas sack. Dressed in dark clothes, hooded and wearing masks, they took the offerings in a little motorboat and cruised across the water to the cursed rock. As they neared the little islet, one of them turned off the boat's engine. They coasted the rest of the way, and by the time the motorboat bumped up gently against the rocks, the engine had fallen completely silent. After tying off the motorboat, the masked men climbed over the rocks to the foot of the lighthouse. One of them placed the foul-smelling candle at the base of the lighthouse door. The other dumped the contents of the canvas bag out next to the candle. They both stepped back and waited. Soon the lighthouse door cracked open, and something peered out at them. When she spoke, her words sounded as though they had been whispered long ago in an echoing cavern, and the echoes had never stopped. "What have you brought me?" The masked men shared a glance. "A boy," one of them said, his nervousness muffled by the mask. His name was Andy Curian. The lighthouse door swung open further. The 2 masked men did their best to watch as the folded-up corpse was pulled back into the darkness. The candle flame went out without a sound. Smoke coiled up into the thickening night. "We wanted to ask you, I know why you have come. I have watched you. A rattling, desiccated sigh. You think I can help you." The masked men shuffled their feet. "Can you?" For a moment, there was just the hoarse chuckle of the cool ocean wind, the giggle of waves breaking on the rocks, and the heavy breathing of the men in masks. They peered into the darkness on the other side of the open doorway, but could no longer see anyone or anything left. Then, at last, "Bring me another one. Alive this time, and young. A young mind is essential." The men nodded quickly in unison, and the lighthouse door swung shut with a clang. The 2 masked men returned to the motorboat in uneasy silence. They untied it without saying a word, climbed in, and revved the engine. Soon they had left the cursed rock behind. It was full dark by the time they reached the shore. Back in the place called Morgana Wynd, out of sight of the lighthouse, with their masks off, one of them finally broke the silence. "I know who we should use." The other smirked. "Yours or mine?" And that, my friends, is the end of the prologue of Morgana Wynd. I'll include the links in the description below where you can purchase this book either for e-reader or in print. Thank you very much for listening. Take care. Bye for now.